As of May 14th, the Detroit Pistons still do not have a president of basketball operations, but we do have an update on how that search is going. We'll talk about that in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. Later on, I want to talk more about the Pistons getting the 5th overall pick, what this means, some potential outcomes, and then also even deeper into the podcast, I want to talk about some potential prospects that the Detroit Pistons could be selecting at 5. But to start this off, obviously, at this point, again, as of March 14th, at this point, the draft doesn't even really matter. The free agency doesn't even really matter. The trade market doesn't really matter. The roster just doesn't really matter. The coaching staff doesn't really matter because the Pistons don't have someone making these decisions. They don't know who's going to be making the decisions. They don't know who's going to be making the draft or draft pick. They don't know who's going to be making these trades, potential trades. They don't know who's going to be signing the free agents. They don't know who's going to be determining whether Monty Williams returns, whether Troy Weaver returns. They don't have someone to determine any of these things because they are still searching for a president of basketball operations. And I do think there's a part of me that does think it's a little concerning that they don't have one yet. This is one of the reasons I said mid-season the Pistons should clear staff, clear everything, and look for someone new. So they had the whole season to look and get somebody in so that person would have, a lot of time to prep for this offseason. There is a concern of mine that the deeper you get into this offseason, the closer you get to the draft, the closer you get to the free agency, you're not giving whoever's going to be coming in to take over this job much time at all to really prep for anything. Like I can't assume that a month is enough time to prep for all that. Like all these other teams are having the entire year, the entire offseason. So that is a little bit concerning for me. However, we do have an update, and this is from James Edwards III, Detroit Pistons beat writer of The Athletic, along with Shams Charania. Everyone knows who Shams is. They came out with an article yesterday on the 13th. And the title of this article was Detroit Pistons Basketball Operations Search, the latest we're hearing. And they opened up the article with the first paragraph saying the Detroit Pistons could come to a hiring decision on their president of basketball operations within the next few weeks. Now, the biggest news from this, we'll come back to the point of the next few weeks that will be brought up. But the biggest news of all this, they seem to have selected their 3 finalists. They have New Orleans. I may mispronounce his name, so I'm sorry. But Trajan Langdon. You got Dallas front office executive Dennis Lindsey. And then also Chicago's Mark Eversley. Those seem to be their 3 finalists for this job. However, there is one wild card that may supersede all of them. And that's Tim Connelly, the head executive of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, remember, Tim Connelly was the one who made the Rudy Gobert trade. Everyone criticized it at the time, laughed at it, and now they are potentially on their way to the Western Conference Finals. Their series is tied 2-2. We'll see how it goes, but they were a massive success this year. A lot of people like how they've built around Anthony Edwards with the wings. Obviously, the Rudy Gobert trade is being received a lot better right now. But this is a guy who went from help build the Denver Nuggets, who we see what the Denver Nuggets are, left, came to Minnesota, and has not helped make Minnesota what they are after the years and years of struggling they've went through. So Tim Connelly is very well respected in the NBA community, and he is one of the best executives out there, at least how people think of him right now. So if you were able to get him, that would be great. But the obvious question that you guys probably are asking me is, well, if he's the Timberwolves head executive, why is he even being brought up? Well, his contract, he has an opt-out in the final year of his contract. And if any of you guys have been following with the NBA, you probably have heard something, at least, about the Timberwolves ownership problems. They have this whole ordeal going on with the current ownership and Alex Rodriguez and his team trying to buy the team. Don't know. I'm not, inside with the Timberwolves or anything, so I don't know everything that's going on. I just know a little bit of what gets reported. And I know there's a bunch of issues going on with the ownership. So maybe he might want to get out from that. There's some people saying that maybe ownership doesn't want to spend money to keep this team together. Would he want to get away from that? So that's the reason why this is being talked about. And in this article from Shams and James, it says that if the Pistons were to want to get Tim Connelly away from Minnesota, they would have to offer something north of $15 million to get him away from Minnesota. He's currently making $5 million right now. Now, I don't think they'd be saying this if the Pistons weren't willing to do so. Like, if they would not be saying a specific number like that, if that was not something the Pistons wanted to put out and something Tom Gores was willing to do. So yet again, we've talked about this many episodes, my conflictions with Tom Gores. Something that you want, the main thing you want from your owner is someone who's going to spend money and care about the team winning. And he's going to put money where his mouth is. He's put the money where his mouth is on the wrong people, but he's always been willing to spend money to try and make this team better. And it sounds like yet again, he's willing to do it again for Tim Connelly. Now, to wrap up my thoughts on Tim Connelly, if the Pistons were able to get a bought-in Tim Connelly that believes in Kay Cunningham and believes in this franchise and wants to bring it back, then yeah, go ahead. But I can't help but feel at least some concern, or at least some worry after what happened last offseason, when this is basically the exact same thing they did with Monty Williams. Now, I know there's some differences. I'm just saying that there is some similarity with, a guy who doesn't necessarily begging for this job, but you go and get him because you just pay him a boatload of money that he can't say no to. And we see how that worked out with Monty. And he might not even be back next year. I don't think he is. So there is some worry just in that kind of comparison. But Tim Connelly himself, obviously a great executive. And if the Pistons could get him with the team, I think that would probably be a home run. But I mean, we'll see what happens. In the article, they make it seem like it's not too likely, but it is an option that the Pistons are trying to prepare themselves for and get into position for. The problem with this, and the other problem is, remember earlier I mentioned how we'd come back to the few weeks thing. The Timberwolves are not eliminated from the playoffs yet. Now, I know a lot of people, including myself, think Denver has not flipped the momentum and they're going to win that series. I think that's what's going to happen. But let's say Minnesota does not lose this series. Let's say they beat Denver. And then you go to Western Conference Finals and they beat Dallas or OKC. Now they're in the NBA Finals. If they make it to the NBA Finals, you're talking about to like the week before the draft, before their season's over, and then is that when you can finally try to lure him away from Minnesota? Like, I don't think Minnesota's going to probably allow him to, have interviews while he's on the job of a team that's going to the NBA Finals. So you're talking about, or at least talk about leaving the team. I don't think they're going to allow that. We just saw the Milwaukee Bucks not allow Horst to interview with the Detroit Pistons. So, you're talking potentially, if Minnesota makes it that far, potentially waiting until the week before the draft, the week and a half before the draft, before something goes down. I think that's very scary. That's worrisome to me. That's just worrisome to me. But, and then if you were to wait all that time just for him to be like, hey, nah, I'm not interested in it. Now you've wasted that time. And now you bring in one of these other guys as a week before the draft, week and a half before the draft. I don't love that idea. It scares me. The other guys, Trajan Langdon, he's from New Orleans. Now, New Orleans has one of the main things with New Orleans that immediately popped off the paper to me when they mentioned him is that New Orleans has done a great job assembling wings. They have wings all over the place. And what do the Detroit Pistons lack? What have they lacked for years? Wings. That's what they've lacked for years. I can't remember the last time I can say they had good enough wings. I feel like my entire life following the Pistons, they've never had good enough wings. So that jumped off the paper to me. And obviously New Orleans, I know Zion's injuries kind of held them back when, him getting hurt. But when he's been healthy, they've looked at a really good team. And even when he hasn't been healthy in a few seasons, they've looked pretty good. So that's one option. Dallas's Dennis Lindsey. He also was with the Utah Jazz from 2012 to 2021. Interesting name. Haven't heard much. Again, a lot of these guys I don't know much about. Not a lot of us are going to know much about these guys because usually, like I said in the previous episode, if you hear about these guys, it's probably because they've been fired. And you know, you don't hear about the guys who make great moves all that often outside Tim Connelly, like guys like that. So you got Lindsey from the Dallas Mavericks, who are currently potentially going to the Western Conference Finals. And then you got Eversley of the Chicago Bulls, who apparently was on the Pistons' radar before they hired Troy Weaver. So this is some interest that goes back years. I'm going to assume that not many people would be fans of Eversley because of how the Bulls are, conducting themselves with how they're building their team right now, how it sounds like they're going to build their team going forward again. So that's where we're at right now. It sounds like the Pistons have 3 finalists. They have a wild card in Tim Connelly that they're going to try to get. But that's where we're at right now, and it sounds like we may be still a few weeks away from finding out who's going to be the head of the president or head of the basketball operations. And is Troy going to be returning? Is Monty going to be returning? Are they going to be making trades? Are they going to be trading the 5th overall pick? Are they keeping it? Like before we can even know any of that, really, it sounds like we're at least a few weeks away. So let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kuka which of these names do you guys want to see become the Detroit Pistons president? My goodness, president of basketball operations. My God. I should just start calling it the hobo. That's what Omari and Bryce said to start calling it. The hobo, the head of basketball operations. That's why I should start calling it. But which one of these names you guys are interested in, let me know. Comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kuka. When we come back, I want to give some thoughts. Obviously, we had the last episode when I talked about it all episode. But now some more composed thoughts about the Pistons getting this 5th overall pick. Some potential outcomes, where I'm at right now with it. We'll talk about that when we come back. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. And you guys remember, I've told you guys this many times. Years ago, when betting became legal in Michigan, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what app to try. I didn't know anything about it. I tried out FanDuel. I have not turned back since. It's super self-explanatory, easy to use, and extremely fun with many, many things on there to do. So again, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. That's what FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. So obviously the Detroit Pistons have fallen to number 5. Everyone knows this. We had a full episode talking about it. Everyone got their grievances out, safe space, you feel me? But now it's been a few days, and I have some more composed thoughts now. And now it's time to be, accept reality for what it is. And what are the Pistons going to do now? So, referencing James Edwards III again, he wrote an article right after the Pistons fell to 5, and the article was titled, "The Pistons Get Number 5 Pick in 2024 NBA Draft. Here's why they should trade it." And you guys should go read James' article because it gives a different perspective on things. After reading James' article, and after how I felt, over the last few weeks leading up to the draft, where I'm at currently with this draft, and where I'm at currently with the Pistons falling to 5. First off, I am starting pre-draft stuff and prospect stuff. Right now, I'm watching Matas Buzulis. I'm sorry. He's the first prospect we'll be talking about. And then we'll be moving on to, I don't know who we're going to do next, but that's what I'm watching right now. I think I said his first name wrong. It's Matas, right? I'm sorry about that. Either way, that's what I'm watching right now. We'll talk about that a little bit later, though. Where I'm at right now with this 5th overall pick, I agree that the Detroit Pistons need to trade it. But there's so many different avenues that the Pistons could take this offseason. And again, it's hard to it's really hard right now to give decisive thoughts and plans about what the Pistons are going to do or should do without them having a president of basketball operations. Because we don't know how they're feeling, how that person will be feeling, what avenue they want to go. However, I'll try to lay out the possible avenues. I'm leaning towards trading the 5th overall pick. So let's start off there. The reason why I say trade the 5th overall pick is because, one, like James has outlined in his article, and like many NBA writers, many NBA scouts, guys who do draft work, this is not a great draft. And James mentions it in this article. I've read it in multiple different articles across the NBA community. Apparently, the scouts that believe the 5th overall pick in this draft would be like getting the 10th, 11th pick in a normal draft. So this is not a strong draft at all. It's not a strong draft. So my thought is this. The Detroit Pistons cannot walk into next year with multiple young guys on their team. They cannot do that again. They cannot walk in with Cade, Ivy, Duren, Stu, Sasser, Grimes, and another first-round pick, 19, 20-year-old. Like, they just can't do it. They can't do it. I'm sure I forgot a name. But they can't do that again. They cannot have 7, 8 of their rotation players be guys 23 and under, 22 and under. Like, they could, if they are a serious franchise, and maybe they're not, but if they are, they cannot do that again. So I'm trading the pick. I'm trading the pick along with one of the young guys to try to go get a win now player. That's what I'm trying to do. I don't know how much value a 19, 20-year-old in a weak draft at number 5 is going to provide to a team that desperately needs win now impact. Like, I just don't know how realistic that is to expect any of a 5th overall pick in a weak draft. So I don't see how that would fit. So that's why I'm leaning towards trading it. That's one avenue. However, an avenue where the Pistons keep the 5th overall pick. Let's say the Pistons, like it's been seeming through reports. Now, and maybe it changes with the new president of basketball operations, but through reports, it seems like Cade and Asar are the cornerstones. It sounds like Cade's untouchable and Asar is damn near the second one. Like, damn near untouchable. He could be traded, but damn near untouchable. That's what it seems like through reporting. So, let's say the Pistons keep Cade and Asar, and they want to trade Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey this offseason for win-now players. Let's say that's what they want to do, which is completely on the board. At that point, if you then want to make a pick at 5 for a guy that you really like, okay, I can buy into that more. Because now you're not walking into the season with 8 guys, 7, 8 guys under the age of 22 being a part of your rotation. Like, at that point, you're not doing that. You're getting rid of 2. You found a new one on the very first year of a rookie scale deal, so you don't have to worry about paying them for 4 years. Like, that is an added benefit where these guys are approaching closer. They're time to pay them. You get rid of those guys. You get some win-now pieces, and then you take another prospect that you want to try to develop that you're high on. I get that too. That's a perspective that you could try to take, or an avenue that you could try to take. Another avenue you could do with this 5th overall pick, you could say, and this is something that I would really be against, but it's possible that the new head of basketball operations may choose to do so. Maybe he says, screw it. We're not trying to make any win-now moves. We're going to keep Ivy. We're going to keep Duren. We're going to keep Sasser, Asar, Stu. We're going to keep all those guys. And we're going to add another guy at 5. And we're going to try to develop all of these young guys at the exact same time. We're going to try to build a tremendous young core. And that's what we're going to do. And then we'll make one big free agent signing. We'll take on a bad contract for some picks. That's how we use our cap space, and that's how we're moving into the next season. And if we're going to be better next year, it's going to have to be off of development of our own guys. That's what it did. That's what they did last year. And they had the worst season in franchise history. They broke the longest losing streak in a single NBA season history. That's what they did last year, and that's the results you got. You got 14 wins. They have 31 wins over the last 2 years combined out of a total of 164 games. That's what they decided to do those years. I cannot fathom that being something that would happen. Especially with... Here's a paragraph. I should have led with this. I can't see that happening, especially with this paragraph and with some of the things I've been telling you guys in the podcast. I can't see that happening. After reading this paragraph as well from James Edwards on his recent article, he said, quote, there is pressure from ownership to get better. There is even more pressure from the outside to get better. And eventually there will probably be pressure from Cunningham to get better. Detroit has to seriously consider making franchise-altering moves sooner than anticipated because of how poorly last season and the others before went, end quote. As I've told you guys many times, when James writes something like this, when there is stuff being put out, when people are saying things, there's a reason why they're saying these things. It's not just being put out to be put out there. There's reason to it. So that last avenue, is it on the board? Yeah, it's on the board. I just can't fathom that happening. If that were to happen, it would shock the hell out of me. So that's the other avenue they could take. And then here's the last avenue they could take. They could make the pick at 5. I mean, there's another avenue where they could trade back, which is something we're not going to dive into yet because I just don't know enough about all the prospects. Once I scout more prospects, then we'll talk about the trade back scenario. I don't want to talk about that yet because I'm not knowledgeable enough to act. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm knowledgeable enough on that to say. But that is another avenue we'll eventually get to down the line. But the other avenue is you make the pick at 5. You keep Ivy and Duren. The 5th overall pick maybe gets sent down to your G League team. You actually utilize your G League system. You bench Ivy and Duren, and you spend big money, whether it be in free agency or taking on big contracts to play over them to try and improve next year and kind of keep them in a reduced role. See if that helps them. If it doesn't, then you move on from them at the deadline. So that's where I'm at now. This is where my thoughts are going now that the Pistons have the 5th overall pick. It's okay. What direction can they go into? Could they do this? If they do that, what does this mean? If they do this, what does that mean? Because what they do with this 5th overall pick, I think, is going to signal what they should do with everything else. If they want to keep that 5th overall pick, that's fine. I don't think you can keep Duren and Ivy then. Or you have to at least move on from one of them. And you should probably move on from some of the other guys too. You just can't. You cannot walk into the season with these young guys being eight players of the rotation being young guys. You just can't do it again. If you do it again, you're just unserious about winning. You're trolling. I can't see it happening. So if they keep the 5th pick, it means to me that they're moving somebody else. If they trade the 5th pick, I think it probably means they're attaching one of those guys. I'm assuming it's probably going to be Ivy, and then keeping Duren. Or you trade Duren with it, and you're keeping Ivy. I think in that scenario, where you trade the 5th pick, I can't see them trading the 5th pick alone because it doesn't have that much value. So if they do trade the 5th pick, it's almost 100% in my head that they're going to be moving on from one of the young guys. And then you can keep the other one. You're bringing in somebody that is ready to help you win right now, and then you use your money in free agency to keep adding to the roster. Like that's what the options I think are right now. Those are the two or three possible avenues they can go now that they fall in the 5. Do I think any of this would be different if they got in 1? Yeah, I think it's a little different because I think Sarr would have been the pick at 1. I don't think they would have traded out of 1. I think they would have picked Sarr at 1 and moved on from Duren. So I don't think there would probably be any talk of moving on from 1. If they actually got it, I think they would have got Sarr. Or if they got 2 and the person at 1 moved on and didn't get Sarr, they may. I think the only player, basically is what I'm saying, the only player they would have stayed at their pick and not traded and considered trading is if they could have got Sarr. Outside of that, I think they're going to probably trade this pick. And with that, here are the avenues that come out of trading it. You either keep the young guys, you go another year of just rebuilding and hoping for development, which is what they did the last 2 years, and it went terribly. You keep the pick and you move on from Ivy and Duren to try to add to the team now, help them win, and then this prospect that you bring in, that's your core, the prospect, Sarr and Cade. Or you just you make the pick and then you keep Ivy and Duren, and then you try to add around them, bench them, move the 5th pick to the G League, and let them develop slowly, I guess. Let them be more towards the background, and then get guys to help you win right now. That's what I'm thinking. That's where my head's at now that the Pistons at the 5th overall pick. But I'd love to hear from you guys. Now that a few days have passed, where are you guys at? What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is the potential outcomes? Like you're at the stop sign. There's 2 roads. You use the pick you trade the pick. And once you take those two roads, there's like 3 more lanes that end up coming out that you have to choose from too. So it's a lot of branches that come on. So where is your guys' heads at? What lane do you think you're going to be following? What's going to happen? What should happen? Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. When we come back, I want to talk about the potential prospects that you guys should probably be looking out for. We'll talk about that when we come back. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the playoff action, win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with basketball, hockey, college basketball entries today on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. And another thing I absolutely love about PrizePicks is it offers injury insurance policy. Let's say you have a player in an NBA game that gets hurt in the first half and does not return in the second half. That player will automatically be rebooted. And for those of you guys who are active in daily fantasy sports, you know how big time that is. And it's why PrizePicks is my favorite daily fantasy sports app out there. So go download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with PrizePicks. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. There's another great way to support the podcast. So we are 43 days and 3 hours away from the draft. How do I know that? I'm looking at Tankathon. 43 days, 3 hours, 47 minutes, and 26 seconds from when I'm recording this right now. So just a little bit over a month. Pistons at 5, obviously. What are some prospects you should be watching for? Well, as of right now, I would be shocked, absolutely, utterly shocked if Sarr is available at 5. Shocked. I would probably be a little shocked if, and this is another name that, I may fumble a little bit, but Zachary Ricochet, I believe is how you pronounce it. I'd be shocked if he's there at 5 as well. After that, it's interesting. Like anyone could go anywhere after that. I think those two guys are going. I don't think those two guys are guaranteed to go 1-2, but I think those two guys are guaranteed to not be there at 5. If one of those guys were there at 5, I'd be shocked. So, names that I would be watching for if I were Pistons fans, and names that I would be going and watching a little bit of to try to get a better idea of. I think number one, because I think this guy is the most likely pick. As of right now, it may change, but this is the guy I think is most likely to be picked by them. Matas Bazulis. I've been starting to watch him right now. I'm about a game and a half, 2 games in. Definitely go check up on him. 6'11", wing defender, wing slasher kind of player. It seems like so far through 2 games. Again, don't quote me on that. I'm not all the way through it, so that could be a very ignorant thing to say at this point. But he's 6'11", played in the G League Ignite. He's going to be 20 years old by the time the season starts. He's 19 years old right now. Again, he is a wing type of player, a 3-4. So check him out. The other player that I'd be watching for, Donovan Clingan. That could be really interesting. 7'2" center who is looked at, from what I've read, I haven't watched him yet, but from what I've read, as a defensive type of center. As we know, the Pistons are looking desperately into adding a defensive center. It seems like they're all but determined that Duren will not be starting at 5. I think it's so far what it seems like through reporting, because they want a defensive center. Now, whether that means Duren's off the team or not, I don't know. He could just be the backup, but they want a defensive center starting next year, and that Donovan Clingan is that. He's 20 years old, 7'2", 265 pounds. Averaged nearly 4. These are per 36 minutes. Yeah. Per game, average around 2.5 blocks a game last year at UConn. So that's a name I would be watching for. There was a few guards that I know. I've already had some Pistons fans reaching out to me and saying, hey, check this guy out, check this guy out. I can't imagine the Pistons would take another guard. I can't imagine it. Which is why I think that, like, if their decision is, okay, well, the best prospect we see here for us is a guard, trade it. Like, I think that's what the thought process will be. If they scout and they feel like, okay, this wing player, whether it be Matas or maybe it's Klingon or whatever, that's the best prospect for us, then I could see them maybe holding onto the pick and trying to move the other guys. If they come to the conclusion, yeah, the best prospect here is like a point guard or a 6'3" shooting guard, 6'2" shooting guard, I could see them being like, oh, yeah, now it's time to move it because we do not want to add that to the team. I can't see them trying to add that, but if you are a believer that the Pistons could be trying to get the guy next to Cade and they're done with Ivy in this draft, some names that you should be looking forward to: Reed Shepherd, 6'3" guy out of Kentucky, real nice shooter. He just had a crazy vertical jump at the combine, so watch out for him. Ron Holland, that's another guy I'd be looking at. Rob Dillingham, even though Ron Holland's 6'8", that doesn't fall necessarily in the small point guard type of what I was talking about, but Ron Holland is a name you should be watching for, another G League Ignite. But going back to the guards, Rob Dillingham, Stefan Castle, Nikola Topic, those are some names that you should probably watch for. I know Cody Williams is another guy people are mentioning. He is a 6'8", skinnier type of wing player. So those are some just names I would throw out there right now for you guys to go check out. And some under the radar names that I think Pistons fans should pay attention to from what I've read. I haven't scouted these guys yet, but from what I've read about these prospects, there's two guys that have jumped out to me that I think could be under the radar guys that maybe the Pistons could be interested in a trade back scenario. And maybe I feel completely different once I do my own scouting. But from what I've read, two names: Dalton Connect from Tennessee, 6'6". Go look at him. And then Kyle Filipowski. Watch him. Those are two names that I think could be under the radar, especially if the Pistons end up trying to move back. But those are the guys that you guys will probably be seeing on the podcast us talk about. I don't know. We'll try to look at all the other names, but a lot of the guys that I have not named, I just don't see the Pistons being interested in at 5. So, but those are the names right there that I'll be going through and looking at. So if there's a name that I did not say that you guys think I should be looking into, let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter. If you guys have a favorite that you guys want me to talk about after I get done with Matas, you want me to go look into, again, let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Cougar Hill. Till next time, that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. And until next time, peace out.